The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Back to the phones, we go to Sheila. Wow, Sheila, you waited. Good morning. You're on the show.
Hi, Pete. I just was hearing your interview with about Orly tapes and about two Barack Obamas. I don't know if you're aware of a blog named Lane Cherry.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, well, he or she, whoever it is that does that blog, has been on to that for at least 9 months. He's been talking about that.
No, let's go slow because it's Alfred Hitchcock, when he made movies, had a term that he actually made up called the MacGuffin. And if you follow Hitchcock's films, for instance, in The Birds, the MacGuffin is the two lovebirds. Remember, she buys the birds. He always has something that holds up through his films that Hitchcock himself dubbed the MacGuffin. Well, in the life of Barack Obama, there is a MacGuffin, and it's the birth certificate. Having said that, spinning out of all of that comes all of these different theories. I mean, including, you could say man from Mars if you wanted to, because there once at least in my mind, that it's established that that official life story, I mean, as God is my witness, is not true.
I agree.
Have you noticed, and I had this conversation with a friend last night, have you noticed all the criticisms that used to come out of the Denver Post and other places aimed at this radio show, or all the national making fun of birthers, all this kind of stuff? Have you noticed, Sheila, it's gone?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, Pete, I've been listening to you for like 5 or 6 years now. I got hooked up by you onto you, but through the Birther Report. I originally called you a couple of years ago. I'm from Massachusetts, and you were the only one that was talking about it.
I'm sitting in the studio right now with the guys coming on next hour, Steve Laffey, and he was saying that when he moved here, he said, I hooked on your show, and you were talking about this. And it is, I mean, I don't know what explains me in this, but it's like, who killed John Benet Ramsey? And I'm not making Obama into a killer, don't misunderstand me, but I just hook into these things, and I think, I know there's an answer. And if you noticed the Silence of the Lambs, the Denver Post used to cartoon me and write columns about the racist birther KHOW show and the rest of that stuff, or all the little sidebar idiots. When I got fired at Brand X, they said it's good to get his birther racist ass off the air. Well, no, that's fine. But if that's all you have, in other words, these people will not, come to the studio or debate or say, oh, gee, he really was in Hawaii until he was... he did go to the airport with his daddy to say goodbye, and Mommy and Daddy did live together, and and those are not true. But even he himself, the last time he is caught in a bald-faced lie was when he was talking to his little kids, when he said, I know what it's like to be raised without a father. My father, I went to the airport to say goodbye to my dad. You got him on tape saying it. When I was 2.5 years of age, because he was going to Harvard, and Mommy talked to me and said this and that and the other. Hell, he wasn't even in Hawaii. No one knows where he was, because was he still in Washington State? When did he come back to the Rock? When did Mommy meet Lolo? When did they go? We don't know that stuff. I mean, and not that it's important, but in a greater sense, it is.
No, this whole thing is very important, Pete, because this man is a usurper, and he needs to be removed from office, and it needs to be done now.
Well, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm convinced that I'm writing again a lot these days because I have a lot of, for whatever reasons, but you would have to go to the Denver Post and go to Greg Moore and Dean Singleton. You'd have to go to the networks. You'd have to go to Brian Williams. You'd have to go to all of these fools and idiots, and you'd have to say to them, you were wrong, admit it, and they can't. One of the steps in recovery is to, seriously, I take my recovery seriously. You say to yourself, well, when you talk about, your grievances to yourself and others, and then amends that you make, and that's an important part of being well. And I'm telling you, these people have promoted and called us liars and fools and racist and pigs and everything they have for so many years.
Crazy.
And crazy's easy. But what I'm saying to you, Sheila, is they have now gone to ground. They
Yes.
don't talk. And so I think down deep inside of their little hearts and souls, they know they screwed the pooch. Fair enough?
I hope so. Fair enough.
It has
Hey,
to,
keep up the good
all
work,
right, we'll
Pete.
talk. Thank you. Eventually, as Shakespeare tells us, truth will out. It's Shakespearean. It's Old Testament. It's Greek theater. There's Tom Tancredo right back after this. Peter Boyles, Radio Free Denver, the voice of the people, 710 KNUS. Our scheduled guests are in studio, but this man has called and been on hold 2 times. He's calling from New York. So before we go with scheduled programming, I just want to be fair to Carl in New York. Where in New York are you calling from, brother?
Actually, just outside the city in West Hempstead in Nassau County.
I'm glad you have me on the show. Thanks for listening. Good morning.
I'm about ready to start building an ark, I'll tell you. Listen, I have a question, and I tried to get through to Orly Tates, and I may just call her again. I've done that in the past.
All right.
But she and Susan Daniels agree, and anybody with an IQ with 3 digits in it agrees, that their Social Security number is fraudulent. But where they disagree is that Susan Daniels does not believe it goes back to Harry Bunnell, and Tates does.
I know.
Any idea why?
Well, here again, first of all, thank you for listening long distance and calling.
Well, you're the only one, by the way.
That either says one thing or another. I'm not sure yet. But as I said all the time, with the MacGuffin, with a mystery, anything goes, because nothing is secure. The only thing that's secure about the discussion of the argument is the official story isn't true. But we have these missing years and missing times and dates and numbers that unless you can access Occidental, unless you can access Colombia, unless you can access Punahou, unless you can access Indonesia, passport records, Social Security numbers, you see the problem. Medical records, passport stuff is significant. I think I already said that. But then you can't know, and it's just for the investigators, and it becomes this guessing game. And that's all I can tell. I know this much, Carl, that the official story is a lie.
Yeah, I do too. But if we could sit those two down together, maybe we could get to the bottom of where that Social Security number goes to.
Well, the Social Security number, and I side with Susan Daniels on this.
Yeah,
but
me too.
The Social Security number is clearly issued in Connecticut. You remember when Mr. O, Bill O'Reilly, said, well, his dad, like his father could do this. His father got it for him when he was at Yale. Yeah. And I said, Mr. O, Yale's not in Connecticut. I mean, but you remember that one? But then, and Mr. O had seen the truth, and Mr. O, that's when the wheels came off Mr. O for me. But O'Reilly is, and then what's his payback? He gets the halftime interview. I'm not the smartest guy in the room by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm certainly not even when I'm sitting in here alone. But the point is, can you, as I say all the time, can you find the elephants and the giraffe in this picture?
Yeah.
I can. Remember, I used to go to my grandma's, and there'd give this thing, you could find the elephants upside down in the trees and that kind of stuff. That's what this question really.
Yeah, O'Reilly was also the one who very early on said he saw Barack Obama's birth certificate.
No, and it turns out that he actually, then he didn't do this and he didn't do that. It really got down to was the those boys that work for him, and that was the guy that I got in a rub with. They saw it in the newspaper. That was the newspaper that said "At Home," and they were living in this house that actually was a rental, and they were living in the back. And, it was mom and dad. It wasn't her. She's already chogied. She's already in Washington State. I mean, it's. But may I ask this? 2 questions, and I got to jump to guess. Number 1, how old are you? And number 2, when did you really come on to this that the story's not straight?
Number 1, 62. I'll be 63 on June 18. And man, have I seen change. And when did I get on to this?
Yeah.
2008, it was Phil Berg who turned me on to this.
I've talked to Phil Berg many times.
Yep. I mean, he was the one very early on. I mean, I called him up, and I said, okay, I get the not natural born thing, and I don't really care about it that much, and we could go into why sometime when you haven't got people waiting, but I didn't believe. I said, explain to me why you're saying that this guy is not an American at all. And boy, when that light bulb went off, I couldn't believe it.
Well, again, I put Yale in the wrong state, but it's okay.
Yale's in Connecticut. I'm surrounded.
Harvard's in Massachusetts. They're good boys. You and Mr. O. But no, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind. I would bet my life in Vegas. I would bet my entire whatever money I have left in Las Vegas that this man is not telling the truth. That is how sure I am he's not telling the truth. Now, what's the truth? I would not bet that. Because
yep, but we need to know as much as we can know. Hey, we need Mike Zulo on your show.
He's coming on as soon as they're ready to pop. They're not popping yet.
Boy. Oh, boy. I mean, he's on the radio in Florida, you know. I mean,
yes, but they haven't dropped the information that they have.
No, I know. Believe me, I'm all over it.
Yeah, we've had Zulo on many times, and Sheriff Joe. Thanks, Bubba.
Well, great.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.